If you've been listening to past episodes, you've probably heard her name come up again and again. Dr. Lynette Louise. Lynette.
From Lynette.
Dr. Lynette Louise.
Lynette Louise.
Dr. Lynette Louise isn't just someone I admire. She's my mentor. With 8 children and more grandchildren and even more great-grandchildren, she somehow finds the time, and I'll be doing my best to bring her back here as often as possible. Lynette's approach is different, and in the world of being different, that's exactly what we need in order to learn. Progress can feel impossible. From having an autistic brother, to raising a deaf son with cochlear implants, or working with families as a neurotherapist, I've seen how overwhelming it can be to feel like nothing is changing. But life has taught me that growth is always within reach. Every brain can learn and adapt no matter the diagnosis, and believing in someone can shape their future. You see, you have a choice: to live a life weighed down by limitations, or to embrace a life filled with possibility. And I'm here to help you make that choice by sharing stories of caregivers and experts that have changed my life, the tools I wish I had known, and the conversations that have questioned my beliefs. I'm Leloa, and this is All Brains Grow. Okay, well, welcome, Lynette. I'm so happy to have you.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you. I love that it was last minute, by the way. That always makes it so spontaneous, and I never know what I'm going to say. So buckle up, people.
Okay. I've known you as a mother, as a clinician, and as just a force who has changed people's lives, mine included. Is there a specific moment that you can take us back to with your family personally that made you think that you can help others? What makes you keep on sharing your wisdom and helping us all?
I have to say that is the very first time I've ever had that question, and I've done a lot of interviews. I don't believe that there was a time when I thought I should share my wisdom. I believe that happened in utero. Having had 8 children, which for the sake of others, I'm going to give a quick backstory. I raised 8 children. 6 were multiply handicapped and adopted and came from a variety of homes and circumstances, and only one still is dependent. They've done really well in terms of what society thinks a child needs to do to grow up and be healthy. But, like all people, life continues to throw stuff their way and they continue to have to solve. So there's no such thing as done. But I'm very proud of my children, and I'm really impressed by their progress. I'm a great grandmother at this point, so it's been a long journey. And I do not recall a time when I did not think I had wisdom to share. So I believe we have a personality that we come into this world with. I've seen it with all my kids, hence I wanted to tell you about all of them. Regardless of diagnosis, regardless of circumstances, they each have their own personality, and everything had to be personalized for them because they're not a recipe. They're not motivated equally or this, in the same fashion, with the same energy, with the same ideas. And neither was I a recipe. I remember being 3 years old in church, well, Sunday school. And so I can talk, but I'm 3. So I have that garbled, very small amount of information kind of language. and it's more of a preschool than a Sunday school, but they're telling the story of God. And I got so upset with them. I was like, no, my God does not. He does not. Right. And I was offended that they would tell stories of God doing these horrible things. Now I'm 3. Where did that come from? My personality. So we can't say that there was something in my life that turned me into someone who wanted to lead the way. I came out wanting to lead the way and looked for something to say, I believe.
I love that you brought this up. Okay, so how can we make the difference in someone if it's their personality, if it's their brain, if it's their diagnosis, if it's their life and the environment? Because everything is so interconnected. And obviously, you've always taught that, life is feedback. And so we are shaped by everything around us. But then aren't there things that are just so intrinsically, well, what's the word?
Intrinsically.
Intrinsically um, us?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do you
And
make that in someone who has a very strong um, brain difference?
well, first of all, you could call us all brain different, right? If we all have our own personality and we're intrinsically driven in a certain way, then we're all different from each other.
Mm.
I think the real trick is to go to yourself first and say, okay, what is it I want from this other person? And why do I want it? Because, it's so easy to get caught up in trying to go nature versus nurture. Go, okay,
Mm.
this is their nature. We have to do it this way. Or everything's nurture. So we're going to, I can change them in whatever way I want by how I nurture them. And neither of those is true. We want singular answers because of our own limitations, not because of their limitations. And that's an important thing to realize, that what you want from someone else is generally to make your life more convenient and happy and look successful and all of that. When you can question your motivations, your own reasons, and say, what is it that I'm really trying to do? I'll give you an example. My son, Dar, who's the one that's still dependent and very nicely staying quiet for us in the bath.
I was wondering where he was.
He, when he was young, I had this question all the time. Am I playing God? Is it my right to try to change him? And when I changed the word change to teach, it got sensible.
Mm.
I wasn't frustrated. I didn't feel like he had to become anything. I just looked for the next thing to teach. And in fact, that was the secret. So with all the kids, as they grew, if I could stay in the present moment with them, with an eye to what I wanted to see them learn and be able to accomplish so that they could live independent, valuable lives, self-valuable. Um, if I could stay in the present, the answers were always there. The problems always came when I mixed me into it and wanted something so that I felt successful or my life was easier. And that's really the trick. Know that you're teaching, try to be in the present with an eye to the life goal, and just ask for the next step. That's it. No matter how capable or challenged a child is, that's what you do.
It's so funny. Yesterday, my brother, Milo, who's autistic, came over to the house for dinner. And whenever he sees us for the first time in a while, the first 10 minutes are just him asking questions and questions and questions and repeating them. And then once he's done with that, he can eat if that's what we're doing. And when he was finally silent, I was like, oh, finally, like, why was he talking so much? And I had all these thoughts. And my kids were next to me and they wouldn't stop talking. And I was in my head, I was like, why can't everyone just shut up and just sit down and have a meal. And then when everyone actually did that, I was like, wait, why did I want these things? And it's for my comfort.
Right.
It's what,
Right. And that's valuable. That's important.
yes, but then that moment I was like, wait, but what about what they enjoy?
Right.
I'm just having them, I'm wanting silence because I need that in that moment right now. But it did not take into account what they wanted in any shape or form. So
Okay.
it's
Can I jump onto that
yes.
for a second? Because that's a great example. So maybe what they want, let's use Milo because Milo's such a great example of so many things. So your brother, maybe what he wants is for you to be as interested in what he's talking about and as focused as he is. And maybe he won't have to talk as long. Understand our
Mm,
special people, they create a different type of energy in that they read our energy, they feel their own energy. If we have a slight disinterest in what they're sharing and we're just being patient with air quotes, being patient, right? And letting them talk till they're done, they know that. And there's a desperation that wells up inside of them that makes it so that, wow, I really have to say it over and over again until I don't have that feeling that you're giving me because you're not actually interested in what I have to say. Right. And your
mm.
brother's a good example because I remember when I would visit him and he went through all these learnings and he's walking through Paris to go to my hotel room all independent while we're all hiding, sending phone calls to each other. He just passed this station, right? And he'd get there and, we'd do a couple of things and he'd look in above some water bottles and shampoo bottles and stuff. He'd do his thing. And then he would just lay on the bed quiet and just lay there. And I'd say, so aren't you bored? Like, why do you always want to come here? He says, to be together. And I thought, wow, we wouldn't have known this if I hadn't been able to just give him the space and let him do it and be 100% into what he was doing. He just used himself up very quickly and then just wanted to be together in silence. Now, granted, there was just me and him. So there was only that energy. And as soon as there's other people in the room, then there's that other feeling that your brother would have, which is I have to talk inside here, just like your kids, try to get their words in so that you can be 100% focused on them. And that's not possible. You can't be 100% focused on three people. So you'll always have the circumstance. But if inside you can just adore the chaos
Yeah.
and the musical milieu of voices, then it won't be frustrating. You won't be seeking the silence. You'll be kind of surprised by it when it happens and then enjoy that. It'll be two different events.
You know what I enjoyed? And I honestly teared up when it happened. So when everyone started eating, uh he was eating his sandwich. And he was,
Milo,
yes,
brother,
Milo, sorry. I swear to God, he didn't stop staring at me right in the eyes. We had a conversation.
that's so cool.
We had a full on, we didn't say a word. We didn't say a word. And I got so emotional because I was like, Milo, is there something you want to say? I actually asked this. I was like, Milo, I'm listening. I'm listening. I'm yours. Like, what is it? It's like, no, no, don't talk. I was like, okay, I'm here. And we just
That's so
kept staring at I don't think I've had the last connection I've had like that was years ago. It was really funny. Um, my crush at the time had left the city and I was really sad walking on the streets with him. And he all by himself took my
walking on the streets with your brother, not your
yes,
crush.
sorry, no, my
Okay.
brother. And he took my hand and like held it really tightly. Anyway, these are really rare moments of you're so right, these silence of what communication can be And
Right. Right. And it's all about what's in our head. It goes back to the simple active listening. It's so common to be busy in your head thinking of what you want to say next, so that when the other person talks, you're not really listening. And it's a
so
skill.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a skill. We have to learn to listen. And everyone eventually realizes this, I hope. Gets to a point where they go, geez, I'm not really listening. I better pay attention, or somebody points it out and you start trying. But when we're with special people who speak to us in ways that we don't see as valuable, and when their interests seem ridiculous to us, we still do that. We stay inside our own head, give them our face with a expression they can easily read, even though we think we're hiding it. And we we perpetuate the problem they have by how we are. So what you did there was you actually gave him the connection, and he was able to reach across the table or next to you or wherever the sitting arrangement was, and just be with you. And that's what I experienced with him when I was in Paris all the time. He's really very intense. It's really cool.
Thank you for reminding me to listen
You're
truly
welcome.
and genuinely. I think we can all agree that we get caught up with not life, I think, but with wanting, we always want more, right? For the person we love. But it's such a balance of, and you've taught, actually, I would love for you to explain this. You've always taught us to raise the bar, right?
Mhm.
If I ask my mom, like, if there's one thing that Lynette taught you, she always says she taught me to raise the bar, to believe in and not settle maybe in what he would be capable of. And as beautiful as this is, there's also that acceptance of
Right.
who they are and of being in the present, like you said.
Hmm.
And that's hard to juggle, to teach constantly and to know what
Right.
to teach, but
Right.
also be in a state of it's okay if it doesn't work.
I'm going to create a visual here. um, I saw somebody showing this for how they do their physical, I think it was maybe judo or something, but the power of their body. Let's see if I can describe it well. First, I'll make the statement that everyone accomplishes the task just beneath the bar they set. So you never actually quite reach your bar. And this is true of all humans. So you always want to reach beyond your bar. So there's this person who's trying to push, imagine 6 very strong people standing in a line, and then you're in front and you want to push the first person over. And you can't. You push that first person as hard as you can, and all these other people are holding them up.
Hmm.
But if you want to push the last person over by pushing the first person, believe me, you will. Something about how we move our energy, and in many martial arts, they'll teach you this, punch beyond the body, do that. But I don't want to talk punch. So, so you want to push the last person over. When you push, you will be different. Your energy will flow from you through them to the last person differently. This is true of all goal setting. And it only works if the person doing the pushing is also accepting of the circumstance. So they're actually the same thing.
Mm.
When you accept where you are, you ground yourself, you set your goal, and you push. You go for it because you're accepting of where you are. Same visual. I decide, okay, I know this works. I'm going to push that last person over. I hope I can do it. I hope I can do it. I don't know if I'm strong enough. I don't know. Maybe there's, and now you're uncertain. You're not accepting of where you are. You're not believing in your ability to reach beyond the goal. You question maybe the third person in the line has a special ability, or they might step out. You start reducing your energy flow, and you can't, even though you think you're doing the right job, you can't push them over. This is a real thing. You can test it if you want. Line up your friends at a party. So it's a real truth in a parlor game, but it's also a real truth moment to moment. You must set your bar higher than you think you can reach, then think you can reach it, and accept where you're coming from all at the same time. And then you get there. You get close to there. Then you set your bar higher again. And that's how you move forward.
That was a nice visual. So would that mean that, you know what, this made me think of when, if you remember, you saw my son Talal before we learned that he was deaf. At the time, he had a very strong speech delay. We didn't know what was going on. And you asked me a question. You told me, are you teaching him communication? And I looked at you and I was like, I think he was 1.5 at the time.
It was, I
One.
think, 18 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was 18 months, I think. Because he was running way too good to be one. He was way too, everybody was like, had her mom had that, remember she had that leash?
No, he was one.
Was he only one? Holy
because
cow.
he was born in July and you came in August, September.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So like one.
wow. 13, 14 months. Okay.
And I was like, I mean, he's gonna catch up on talking. Like, what do you mean? Am I teaching communication? And then you started explaining that I have to, and then you would catch me in these moments and say, what are you teaching? And I'm like, what do you mean? What am I teaching? And then you'd look at me again and say, what's your goal? And to go back to what you were just talking about, the only way I was able to start answering these questions is when I was able to look at what was going on in the present and seeing and be accepting, because I was in denial. It's not that I was in denial, I just
Yeah, you were.
I was in denial. And so I had to accept the present.
Right.
So that I could know where to push and what to push and how hard to push.
Right. And let's change the word push to compel, because now we're talking about language and communication, right? So the word push will draw a different image. And just to give people a sense, a picture they can imagine. Basically, your son was running away all the time, not running away like he didn't want to be with people, running away in glee and happiness and with ideas. Everything in front of him was interesting. And a lot of people might read that as autism, but I remember looking at it going, no. So I started calling him Buddy and just constantly, hey, buddy. And if I was behind him, he's still moving forward and not responding. So you could see that there was not that reciprocation of communication happening. And so the idea then is to compel him to look at you, to compel him to see you communicate, to get in front, to make sure you use your hands and your face and be consistent with the word you're asking and the thing you're showing. Like if you're saying, an item, for example, do you want the car? And you have the car in your face. So all of that would be to teach communication, would be to compel him. And I want to switch the word because I don't want people thinking incorrectly because of my previous example, that you could chase someone who's deaf and push them into communicating, because you can't. It's the opposite. You're behind them, you're invisible. They don't hear you. Right? You got to get to where they hear you with their eyes and with their energy too. He would have been feeling that energy of trying to catch up to him. And that would make him run away even more. Anyone you chase runs away. So the idea is to compel, and let's just switch the word for now.
Wow. No, and then you can use that word compel for anything else you're teaching, obviously, instead of it being that I'm trying to push this lesson forward.
Right.
I'm because what you've always taught is that motivation is as important as, regulation or anything else that we want them to have, because if they can't stay motivated and they're not interested truly in what we're trying to teach them, then it won't last.
Right. They'll just throw you a bone. They'll give you what you're asking for, but it won't generalize or intrinsically become a part of them. So when you're truly pushing like that and not including, that's what we started with, where I said it was about my personality. It was about my children's personalities. You have to know what matters to someone, what they're interested in, how they want to walk in the world. It's not how I want you to walk in the world. It's how do you want to walk in the world, and how do I help you get there and have a concept of that, and at the same time live within the rules of society enough that you can be successful.
That was so beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. One thing to address there, though, is I do teach compel more than push all the time, and like pull the motivation out. But the reason, to be honest, that I teach that is because that's a safe and wonderful thing to teach and will work. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that parents will push. That teachers will push that. So that's already taken care of. There is a push-pull in really helping someone. There is a kind of, you can do it like the coach does, right? Like there is a kind of, let's push you through society, but society pushes all the time. I don't teach it because usually I'm trying to undo the damage that someone did by incorrectly pushing. And I don't want to teach to anything that becomes abusive. But I don't want parents to feel bad or feel guilty when they catch themselves pushing and being, maybe I lost my temper and I yelled, but oh my gosh, that worked, right? Yes, it worked for that moment, but make sure you go back and compel now and teach the lesson. Don't be tricked into thinking that yelling and screaming and shoving and all of that will actually teach. But every once in a while, it'll be responded to with exactly what you've been after all the time, right? And just don't be tricked by that. Go back to compelling and let that be something that was a happy accident and you learn from and they learn from.
Wow, I didn't know I needed that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This was All Brains Grow. Thanks for joining us. You can head to allbrainsgrow.com/podcast for more resources and support. This show was produced and edited by Lina Fansa and myself, Leloa. Music by Blue Dot Sessions.